Okay, welcome to the summary of the first turn of 1942. This is the two cards that were in play, even though the Germans won the initiative, which was good because they managed to make some moves before the opponent could do so. The event wasn't usable, obviously, because they didn't have any units in Russia. And, the Russians could get some free steps for their infantry, which was nice as well, but they had PPs to spare, so as far as that's concerned, it wasn't overly useful either. So which battles took place? Well, first of all, it wasn't a battle because they could just move in there. The Russian unit moved from Finland into northern Sweden, thereby capturing the two resources and depriving Germany from those. As far as I know, that didn't cost any CM because there was no enemy unit. I also see now why in the files section here in Board Game Geek there are some alternative units, for instance for the Swedes, because the rules dictate that you set up at least one unit in the capital, and well, since Sweden only has one unit officially, it cannot defend its resource. And in the files section, you actually have Sweden divided up into two units of 2 steps each. So that might actually be fun to use as a house rule. Anyway, the Germans lost 2 resources, and there is no diplomacy anymore whatsoever. So yeah, that's a good question too. What happens then? Since there is no diplomacy anymore, do the Swedes now automatically join Germany? I suppose they do. I don't know. I guess so. And, well, some of the Finnish units, which are allied to the Russians, one of them moved into northern Norway. Now, we did have a couple of battles. There was a battle over Convoy Area C, but the British didn't suffer any losses. They were at step 3 and they remain at step 3. It's a winter turn everywhere. So the Germans attacked with a naval bomber and a full-strength U-boat, but all of them were misses. And on round 2, the convoy was joined by an American full-strength cruiser and I believe a British carrier and British fighter, and they did inflict some hits on the Germans. In fact, if I remember correctly, the naval bomber suffered 1 hit and the U-boat was destroyed. Now, which other battles do we have? Well, here in Poland, the Germans attacked first, so that actually prevented the Russians, or at least the Poles, to attack Berlin to weaken the Germans a little bit. The Germans didn't manage to actually take Warsaw, but they did inflict some hits on the Poles and Russians, even though most of that was pretty easily restored during the production phase. They also attacked Krakow. But basically the same thing happened, even though the Russians and Poles suffered even fewer losses there. But the good thing for the Germans is, and that sounds contradictory perhaps, but the good thing was that they had to retreat and they could put some of their stronger units, to divide them a little bit around Berlin and the surrounding areas. So that was actually, I suppose, a blessing in disguise for them. What else happened? The Brits were attempting to invade Sicily, but then they discovered the weather was actually pretty bad and they couldn't. I mean, what I'm trying to say, it's not allowed to invade during a winter turn anywhere on the board, and I initially forgot about that, but fortunately I remember just in time, and also it would have cost 2 CM and there wouldn't have been enough points available. 2 were used by the Soviets for reinforcing Poland, and 1 was used to reinforce the battle for the convoy. What happened production-wise? Well, the Russians built quite a few extra factories The Urals is also fair game these days because we've entered 1942, so the initial restriction that they cannot build beyond 2 factory points in the Urals has been lifted, so they've built another one there. And they've actually increased the one in Baku and Kharkov and Kiev, and because they've got quite a few resources at the moment, so this has proven pretty handy for them. Well, the Germans are down to 12 production points, and it looks like they might start losing more and more and more, and the same is true for the Italians. So the Germans actually have more factories than resource points. And the Americans and British, well, the British are currently at a strength of 10, both factory and resource points, although obviously they have a few extra for because of the convoy. And the US is currently at strength 9. Obviously they have 16 potential resource points, but they can also start building additional factories now, which they have, but I believe they can only build 1 per turn. So yeah, that's what it looks like now. So I initially thought the Germans would be done for, but they're actually stronger than one might think at the moment, and the strongest Russian units are either still held up in the Urals, or they are still in the force pool. But obviously it doesn't look too good for the Germans. It may not look as disastrous as I initially thought. But having the Russians at the gates of Berlin in early 1942 obviously is not the way the Germans would have wished for the war to go for them. But anyway, we're not done, so we're moving into the second turn of 1942.